Good morning to everyone, and we are once again welcome to FOASPS webinar series. Today we'll be discussing resource mobilization strategy, and today Mr. Kofi Kumoji will be the one to lead us through this discussion. We'll be taking records of attendance, so I'll ask everyone to write the name and fill in it in the chat box. With much I say, I'll hand over to Mr. Kofi to take over. Mr. Kofi, you can take over now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Samuel. Good morning, dear colleagues. Excuse me, I'm just... okay. Good morning, dear colleagues. We are happy to see you again. And as announced by my colleague Samuel, we'll be discussing resource mobilization strategies today. It is, in my personal opinion, a component, a major component of creating a sustainable organization, creating an autonomous organization, giving the capacity to your organization to have the financial autonomy. Because if you don't have financial autonomy, you cannot pretend that you are sustainable. It is not possible. So how are we going to make sure that we can reach that financial autonomy? This is really what we are going to target today. So the objectives of this session are to give us the opportunity to reflect together on the different type of resources that an organization can pretend to have. Then we will be talking about how we can improve our collective knowledge of the external sources of funding that we can attract to support our association's activities. Because if you don't have activity, you don't have resources, you cannot organize any activity. So we are going to look at the various sources that are available to us. And the third objective will be for us to identify the key components and the steps to structure a resource mobilization strategy or resource mobilization plan. Of course, the session structure and outline that matches with these objectives that I've announced are that first we are going to talk about the different type of resources of an association. And then we will be talking about knowledge of the external sources of funding that are available to us, like I said. And then the third component will be, the third aspect will be the component and the various stages of resource mobilization. So let us start with the first component. I want to give you 1 minute to think about membership fees for new members, to think about regular membership fees, then to think about resources generated by income generation project or income generation activities, then resources that are available through collaboration and partnership with other institutions. Another aspect that I want you to think a little bit about are donation and legacies, and then subsidies and grants. As we are not in presence training program, we are not going to reflect on those aspects in groups as it is shown on the slide. But I just want you to take any of those various means of resources that we can have in our associations and reflect in regard to your association. Do you have all those resources that are accepted, that are mentioned in your constitutions, for example? Do you usually work towards mobilizing any of those 6 source of resources? Okay, so this is something that I want you to start thinking about. When we are talking about membership fees for new members, I don't have another label, but in French we call it frais d'adhésion. Frais d'adhésion can be labeled in English as registration fees. When as you want to become a member of an association and you comply with the statutory conditions and the association accepts you as a member, the first step will be for you to pay the registration fees. This is what we are trying to call here as membership fees for new members. But you'll see that it will be different from regular membership fees. They are paid by new members and they constitute a proof of goodwill and seriousness for the new member. Any association you want to adhere to, you need to show your seriousness, you need to show your goodwill that, yes, I want to become a member of such an association. But this, you will see that this funding source is very limited because it is paid only by new members. In some associations, even the founding members, the founders of the association also pay before they start paying the regular membership dues. But in some associations, they may have decided that founders are not to pay the registration fees. And then, of course, you realize that if only new members are paying such registration fee, it is a very limited source for funding. And most of the time, you will also realize that if your association is really doing the right work, when you receive that registration fee, you are obliged in return to provide some, I want to call them some tools to the new member, like you have to give them the constitution, you have to give them the rules and procedures. If you have any other legal document, you have to provide all those documents to the person. In the past, we were obliged to give the hard copies of those documents for the person, okay? But now we usually use electronic versions, so you don't see the cost of providing those documents, those informations. But in the past, we were obliged to provide the hard copies. And I can suspect that in some association, even today, it can be compulsory for the association to give the hard copy signed by the president as a testimony of the fact that the new member received the regulation, the constitution, etc., by which you operate. Okay. Now you go to regular membership fees. Regular membership fees are generally annual. some associations may have decided that their membership fees are monthly, but generally it is annual. Then the payment can be agreed upon to be made monthly, on a monthly basis, on a quarterly basis, and so on and so forth. So this is something that we've seen in some associations. It is essential for the credibility of the association. We usually have problems for our members to accept to pay their membership dues. But if an association is unable to collect membership dues, it is a strong weakness. It is a heavy weakness, because when, like, a partner, a funding partner want to support you, and they are going through, they are evaluating, they are assessing your association, that is one of the first questions they will ask. What is the amount of your membership dues? What are the records? How are you being able to collect that every year? Like over the last 3 years, what are the results of the collection of your membership dues? They want to see if you are a credible association, if your members are taking their membership seriously, and if they are contributing financially to the association. Normally, your voting capacity normally is subject of the payment of the membership dues, not only for the year within, but all the arrears that you have accumulated. Normally, you should pay them. And I like the English word, you are financial. If you are not financial, you cannot vote. You can participate, but you will be an observer. Now, we are talking about what should be. Now, if your organization, maybe one day before the General Assembly, you realize that you have 2/3 or three-quarter of your members who are not financial, and you, as the president, you decide that, oh, I want a maximum participant in this meeting, this General Assembly. So I want to waive that criteria of being financial before voting. Then you are killing your association. We've seen that in some situations where the president decided that, oh, later, and they will pay later. If you do that, you are killing your association. So I'm strongly calling our presidents to make sure that when they have General Assembly, they make sure that those who are going to vote are financial. And it is even a good moment in time where you can ensure that the collection is done. Okay, so this is something that I really recommend. Another type of resource are what we are calling resource generated by income generating activities. A little reminder, the notion of non-profit does not mean that the association or the non-profit association cannot carry out profit-making activities. It is not true. Sometimes people make confusion. They believe that because you are a non-profit association, our activities we don't need the activities that we are carrying to be profitable, to generate a positive result. If you have enough money to carry out the activity, that's fine. And even sometimes associations supplement the income for the project, and they carry the project. This has been the situation of FOASPS over the last 2 years. Our high-level policy conference, we did not make profit. The 2 high-level policy conferences, we did not make profits, which is very bad. Okay, so it is important to have that in mind. So what is the legal obligation of an association is that you cannot share your profit as a private company will be sharing profit among shareholders. An association can generate profit. It is even encouraged to generate profit, but the profit cannot be shared as dividend to shareholders. You are not shareholders in association. You are associates. And associates cannot share profit. If they make profit, the profit should be there and invest in the vision and mission of that association. But please, you have to make profit when your activities are designed, when you have the budget for your projects, make sure that the expenses will be less than the income. So that at the end of the project, when you report, there should be a remittance, there should be some profit that remains in your account. It is also important, even when like you are making proposal for donors who want to give you grants, and the grant is for a specific project to carry out something that is being agreed between the donor and you. You cannot have your budget to pay the salaries, the rent, all the things that need to be done during the project cycle, and there is no profit. Okay, so here we don't call it profit. When you have a donor that gives a subsidies to your association, what you would do is that when you finish everything and the total of your budget is known, then you can apply a percentage that will be called agency fee. Or sometimes they give other names, but let us call it globally as agencies fees. To give an example for an institution like USAID, if it is less than 10%, you don't need to justify, you don't need to negotiate that. But if it is more than 10%, not only it can be negotiated with the donor, you want to understand why is it that high. So then you have to explain the reasons why it is high. And also, if they accept to have more than 10%, it will mean also that during the implementation of your project, you will need to give evidence, to give justifications of the expenses that are made within that agency fees. So you see, it becomes so complicated that I will not recommend our association, our country federations to get into this kind of agreement to have more than 10% of the agency fees. Samuel, do you need to give some information or shall I proceed?
You can proceed, please.
Okay, thank you. Now you want to talk about donations and legacy. I'm going to fly over them quickly because this is not something regular in our situations, but it can come from members. It can be active members, sympathizers, or honorary members. They can give donation to the association. They can come from peoples outside the association. It can be states, it can be the government, non-state, it can be international civil society organization, or even national civil society organization. If in your country you have like a foundation, like a Dangote Foundation, they can give donation, right? If they decide that they want to sponsor the Healthcare Federation of Nigeria by giving you I don't know, 100 tons of cement for you to build your headquarters, it is donation. It is in-kind donation. Or they can offer even your office. They build everything and they give it to you. Those are donations. They are often in-kind, yes, I was saying it, and in the form of income from usufruct or other assets. Okay, usufruct is a kind of donation that is not final. Like I was giving the example of Dangote Foundation in Nigeria gives you a building to enjoy to install your headquarters. That donation can be final. It is yours from the day they sign the donation agreement. It becomes your property. But there is another way of helping an organization, that is to give the usufruct of that property, meaning that you can use it. You are not going to pay rent, but you use it, and if for any reason you don't need it, you don't need that building again, it goes back to the owner. If your organization is died, I don't know if it is a proper word, you cannot dispose of that building as your property and to be disbursed as any other properties that you have. If you are enjoying the usufruct, it will mean that it will go back to the owner. Okay? So sometimes those are things that people give knowing that, and maybe they can also tell you that you can use it as long as I am alive. So the day they are no more alive, the property may go back to their children, for example. Okay, so it is the condition can be diverse to ensure that they are not a source of loss of autonomy for the association. Okay, yeah. What we are trying to say here is that we are encouraging you, we are recommending strongly that you make sure that donations does not prevent you from having your autonomy, your independence. You know, if an association or any other person gives you, donate to you a property or whatever it is, it should not affect your autonomy and your liberty, your independence. Now, subsidies or grants. Subsidies or grants comply with almost the same rules as donations and legacies, but they relate to projects agreed with donors. Okay, so grant and subsidies are for a certain period of time. They are based on a project that you agreed to implement, etc., etc. So it is very specific. They are often the subject of competitions with other associations. Yeah. If you have a very good relationship with a donor, the donor recognizes the good job that you have done in the past, you are credible, etc., etc., you can be in a position where they can give you a direct grant without putting you in competition with other associations. But most of the time, for the first time you are going to enter into an agreement with a donor, most of the time it is based on competition. They release a call for proposal and you apply, you respond to the call for proposal, and if you are selected, then you receive the grant. Now, lesson learned from these different type of resources in an association. The diversity of resources in their nature and the characteristics requires from associations to be strategic in their resource mobilization approaches. You remember we talked about strategic planning in previous webinar. And in your strategic planning, you should have a component that targets resource mobilization. Or even you can have a strategic sustainability plan or a strategic resource mobilization plan. It depends how you want to structure your work. If you are designing a strategic resource mobilization plan, that will be the best. Then you will need to see what are the various orientation you want to give to your resource mobilization. So it is very important to be strategic in your resource mobilization approaches. This requires in-depth knowledge of the possible sources and their operating methods. For example, if you want to go to the World Bank and request grant, you will not be in position to respond to the same conditions as if you are going to USAID, or if you are going to Dangote Foundation, or you are going to Eco Bank Foundation, for example. You need to understand the condition, the operating systems of all the people you are targeting as potential donors or potential grants making partners. This also involves the mobilization of relevant skills and networks. Yes, if you have a good resource mobilization plan, you will see that sometimes you may need some specific competencies, some expertise, or I would say some skills. For instance, a country federation may not have the means to pay an expert for resource mobilization, but you need to see within your country federation who are the people who are gifted, who have the skills to reach out to people who have the money, convince them to become your financial partners. You may not have that skill as the president or as the treasurer or as the secretary general. But if you are at the position as a board member and you don't have those skills, please look at other people who are in your organization and who may have those skills and rely on them, create a resource mobilization committee or whatever it is, and let them do the job. And they will be reporting to you. If there is a need at a certain point for the president or the treasurer to show up, they will let you show up. So you need to have that kind of real confidence that you grant to people and they will be doing the job. This is the whole substance of this session. This session about resource mobilization is really for us to have a clear understanding of this and to know how we are going to operate within our country federations. Okay, we are not going to do this group exercise. We just go straight to the response. So what are the external sources of funding to support the association activity, the external sources? First, we have the state or the ministries responsible for associations. So when you're talking about the state, you have your ministry of, your tutorial ministry, Ministry of Health. But probably you need to also have a connection with Ministry of Finance, or maybe ministry that is in charge of associations. If you are not in the health sector, you may be in other sectors. And in most of our countries, there is a ministry in charge of associations. So those are the places where you may have the capacity to attract funding. It is extremely rare. It is an extremely rare source. But when the government recognizes the contribution of the association to its effort, it can facilitate access to resources. Let me explain this a little bit. If your government recognizes that, yeah, this association is doing very well, and they themselves as a government cannot grant you funding, at least they can facilitate access to other institutions that can provide resources to you. Let me take this example. WHO, for example, in most of our countries, WHO, unlike any other UN agency, WHO is a technical assistance to the government. They are not a UN agency that receive funding from here and there, etc. No. They are a technical assistant to the government on health issues. That is why you realize that most of WHO offices in our countries, they are accommodated by the government. They don't have their own office that they build, etc. No, they are accommodated by the government. The government gives them the office to operate from. So they cannot do anything with an association like Healthcare Federation if it is not through the Ministry of Health. So it is important to have that understanding so that when we are in a kind of negotiation with WHO, make sure that you have a good will with your Ministry of Health and that the Ministry of Health can support the negotiation that is going on, and that if WHO want to grant you some grant, give you some grant, it will be accepted by the Ministry of Health. Sometimes it will be done through the Ministry of Health. Okay, so very important. Now, we also have state institutions of bilateral cooperation. For instance, when you talk about USAID, it is an American cooperation agency. When you talk about the German cooperation, you may talk about KfW, the French cooperation through AFD, Switzerland cooperation, Japan cooperation through JICA. The modus operandi of bilateral cooperation structures may have a preference for the financing of state. Yeah, sometimes those bilateral cooperation agencies can decide that they want to go straight to local NGOs than going through government. Okay, but some may have the preference of working through state or through government. If that is the case, then what we have said before in relation to WHO will apply here as well. Most of those institutions often launch call for proposal or call for project. Okay, so be ready to get there and respond to those call for proposals. Multilateral cooperation organizations. We have the European Union, we have WAEMU, UMOA, ECOWAS, African Union, ACP, EU. They are mostly focused on funding allocations based on competition. So it will be like the bilateral institutions. They are increasingly moving towards performance-based financing. Performance-based financing is the kind of agreement we had with USAID, meaning that they don't give you the money and you'll be implementing your project, and then you are reporting. And sometimes when you want to purchase or you want to recruit a consultant, you have to go for a non-opposition from the donor before you can proceed, etc., etc. Performance-based funding means there is an agreement that if you have been able to do this, we pay you this. If you've been able to achieve this, we pay you this, etc. So you have to finish, to produce a result, and they will pay for that result. So it is just like they are purchasing the result that you are producing. In our USAID situation, we agreed to provide milestones that are critical steps in the implementation of our J2SU project. So anytime we produce a milestone, we can receive the amount of money that is being allocated for that milestone. Okay, so the terms may be different from one institution to the other, but the principle is the same. You produce a result and we buy that result. Okay. Now we want to talk about the private funding institution, or like foundation. I mentioned them before. Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation is a global foundation. EcoBank Foundation, Mo Ibrahim Foundation. Chamber of Commerce also can be considered private funding structures. Employers can also be, and companies, of course, companies that want to get involved in responsibility, they call it civil something responsibility, responsabilité d'entreprise. I want somebody to help me anyway. So if you have the proper word, write it in the chat for me, please. Responsabilité civile d'entreprise or something like that. They often have the freedom of action and are more flexible in their choice of implementation partners. Yeah, private institutions don't have any constraint, but they have their I will call it personal, their private vision and way of operating. So, but they are flexible if you reach out to them, and they are ready to support the private sector. They can support your institution. If they want to support local NGOs, they can go for it, etc. They are really, really free in the way they operate. Some examples from the field. The World Bank Togo, the World Bank in Togo, the office of the World Bank in Togo. Yes, for your information, FOASPS is now registered as a service provider or a vendor for facilitation of strategic events for the World Bank Togo. IFC, World Bank in Côte d'Ivoire, PSPSCE is accredited as a service provider for training, prospect of fundings, opportunities of IFC. So the World Bank, our colleagues in Côte d'Ivoire, for example, let me say, accredited and receive some funding to do that job of sensitizing, informing the potential private sector in health that can benefit IFC fundings. WAHO is another example. FOASPS joined the partners community of ECOWAS and enjoys the opportunity of interacting with other organizations. So if you have any other example in your country, if you have this kind of agreement, please write it in the chat, and Samuel will read them for us in a few moments. So now we want to go for the last component of this presentation, the component and stages of resource mobilization. A resource mobilization strategy involves: 1, the development of a real corporate culture of sustainability and financial empowerment. It is a question of giving this resource mobilization process all the necessary budget allocation. Okay? So if you have your business, your resource mobilization plan as part of your sustainability and financial sustainability, empowerment, etc. plan, it is important that you identify the activities or the action that may need some funding and put a budget to attach to it. This should not be treated as a profitable investment. This should be treated as a profitable investment and not as an additional expense. Okay? Sometimes people will think that you are making expenses, but make sure that if the expenses you are making are very strategic in terms of attracting more resources, then this is how it should be. Secondly, the implementation of a bold and increasingly independent financing policy. This is the raison d'etre of the strategic plan for the sustainability of the association. Okay? It must indicate what will be done by whom to attract funds from the various identified sources with the appropriate means. So again, when you have your plan, you know the various sources that you are going to chase. Make sure that the people who have the necessary skills according to the kind of target you have are assigned the responsibility to work into that direction. A resource mobilization strategy involves, so we continue, the third involvement of resource mobilization strategy is the multiplication or the diversification of sources of income. The challenge for any association is to remain autonomous in relation to its vision and mission. Okay? So if you have only one donor, okay, somebody sent me the message, responsabilité sociétale des entreprises. And I don't know how we can explain that in English. So, societal corporate responsibilities, that is what I was looking for before. So maybe if you have the proper label, please share. Thank you. So I was saying that the challenge is to have the diversity in your funding partners. If you have only one funding partner and your grant is for 2 years, that was the case for FOASPS. J2SO was a 2-year or 3-year grant. And within the 2-year and maybe 2 years, let me say 2 years, we were unable to find an alternative of that scope to replace or to complement J2SO. So you realize that at the end of that J2SO grant, what do you do? Okay, so the challenge for most of our organization is that how do you make sure that you diversify your sources of funding? You are not stuck on one single funding partner. It is also important to strengthen the capacity of your members to formulate projects and proposals. Of course, like we were saying, most of the big donors proceed by call for proposal, call for projects. So you have to develop your capacity to respond. If you are not able to do that, then you will never be able to attract those fundings that are given after call for proposal. Okay. So it is preferable to have a department or a team dedicated to this kind of mission to be formulating proposal. That is my personal vision, that in an organization, I would prefer to have a full department or at least a team of people who are dedicated, who are trained, who are competent in writing proposal and targeting grants here and there. Member training requires investment and sacrifice from members. So please accept to invest that kind of resources to train your people, to train your team in a way that they can really, really be productive in attracting resources. component and stages of resource mobilization. The third aspect is about the creation of a project bank. Yeah. Why is it important to create a project bank? Because sometimes you come across a call for proposal and you realize that the deadline is in 1 week. Sometimes 1 week will not be enough for you to write a proposal, to think about how it is formulated, the target, etc., and write down the proposal. So having a project bank is critical, meaning that if you have some time, write down a concept note. Okay? Write the concept note, and you can also use old call for proposals. Okay? It will help you to know how to structure your concept note, how to structure your project in the project bank. So that if in the event that there is a call for proposal that is matching with any project in your project bank, you can just pull it, adapt it, and you submit. Okay, so very important to have your project bank. And of course, all projects that you have submitted that were not successful can also be part of your project bank. And you can try to improve them and get ready to submit them for any other call for proposal. Maybe this time you did not win because they received better proposals, but maybe tomorrow your proposal will be the better proposal that will receive the grant. So this is why we need to have a project bank and keep it active. The establishment of a dynamic to explore financing opportunities. Of course, how do you want to say here is that you need to have a strategy to see where the call for proposal are advertised. Okay, as of today, we know that there are some platforms that advertise for call for proposals. For the American government, it is this SamGov platform that is there, where you have not only USAID call for proposal, but other American institutions that advertise for their grants. We have other platforms like the UNGM, United Nations Global Market. They also advertise for all the call for proposal from the UN agencies. Okay, and you can also reach out to those platforms and see what is there. Of course, then we have DEVEX development, something, DEVEX. The name of the platform is DEVEX, DEVEX. Yeah, so most of those platforms are free. You can access them free, but there are so many grant that are advertised there, then it will not be useful for you to be going through. So what they usually do is that you can sign in, you can register for a paid service that is attached to that platform. To any of the platform, there is a paid service whereby you can plan what you want to see according to your institution, your mission, what you want to do, etc., the kind of call for proposal you want to see. You can then program the alerts so that when there are alerts that are matching with your selection of kind of grant you want to see, they will send it to you. So they will be sending to you, if it is not on a daily basis, at least on a weekly basis, those platforms will be sending to you alert that matches with your selections. Conclusion. The current session aims to create the conditions conducive to resource mobilization. You will agree that we did not cover everything, but we just give you, let me say, a resume of what you need to know about it. It did not necessarily have the ambition to provide all the solutions. For example, the development of a proposal or drafting of a project must be a specific subject that I hope we are going to address later. We have a webinar on project development. Similarly, actors may need to develop their capacity for networking, advocacy, partnership development, etc., etc. Those also are other webinars that we are going to organize soon. And yeah, so this is what we want to share with you today. Thank you very much for your time. Thanks for listening to this. If there are any questions, we can respond now.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Fikmoji. Thank you for everyone for participating. It's time for questions now. So if you have a question, you can put it in the chat box. So I'll read it out to Mr. Kofi and for a response. And in the meantime, those who are now joining or those who join later should write the details into the chat box. Your name, your gender, your age, the organization, the country, email, and WhatsApp. Any question, please? Mr. Kofi?
Yes.
There's no question in the chat box also. So it looks like you
But there is a hand
explained.
up. There is a hand up.
Okay. Let me see.
Dr. Ese Thomas Macaulay.
Okay. Yeah. Please, you can talk. You can unmute so that you talk.
Hello.
Yes, please.
Hello. Hi. Good day, Mr. Kofi. Good afternoon.
Sorry. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Dr. Ese.
Yes, sir. Thank you for a great presentation. I'm glad I was part of today's presentation, particularly. I'm not sure what capacity does FOASPS play in supporting country federations or individual companies or organizations in like proposal formatting. This is what I believe is a strong weak point for many medics or medical organizations. Even when seeking people to help write proposals, they're not always very equipped with setting up specific formatting or foundation to fulfill certain gaps. Is it something that perhaps provides support towards the federation or towards individual organizations? Is that something that you'll be doing a training on? And what does that entail particularly? Like in terms of confidentiality, is there a confidentiality agreement if you're doing it one-on-one with organization? It's just I've personally also had experience in the past where I've developed concept notes and these informations kind of gets into another platform that was quite a different experience because I thought I was dealing with professionals and professional opportunity. I mean, setting up professional standard for presenting my company. In the end, it went a different way. So it quite often triggers alarm in engaging and how do we outsource the right partners in doing these proposals? As a business, do you have to have an agreement with whoever's doing your proposal in advance? Because maybe that was where level of experience I wasn't familiar with setting up like an agreement in advance with whoever's writing your proposal. Is it something of the norm?
Okay. Samuel, can I? Because we are getting late, so I will go straight. Okay, thank you, Dr.
Yeah,
Ese.
you can go straight.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Ese. I think there are a series of questions in your intervention. Let me start with the end. If you want to recruit an expert to write a proposal for you, it will be for you to decide which kind of agreement you will have with that person, whether you are going to pay the person, and whether the process is successful or not, the person will be paid anyway. But the writing that we would strongly suggest will be to for the person to accept to take the same risk as you, meaning that they will work with you to make the proposal, and if it is successful, you can pay them, or they will be working on the project in a certain way, whether as a permanent staff for the implementing or consultant for some specific aspects that have been included in the project presentation. So it is something that we encourage to do. Now, talking about the kind of support that FOASPS can provide to country federation, we will say that yes, the permanent secretariat is equipped with people who can provide that kind of support. This is what we are doing ourselves. FOASPS, all the team is engaged in responding to call for proposals and even drafting proposals for our project bank. Okay, we have like 10 projects in our project bank right now. So yes, I will not say that we are experts, but we know how to do that, and we are continuously learning and working towards that. We also try to work in consortium with other institutions because it is a learning process for us. Recently, we sent a proposal to UNITED. That proposal was written in consortium with ARC, African Resource Center of the Gates and Melinda Foundation. And it was a learning process for us. We really enjoy how we interact with them. They learn from us, we learn from them. Okay, so those are the kind of things we encourage. Even at the country federation level, feel free to write proposal with other organizations that share the same vision, the same mission. Okay, feel free to do that. That is one way of learning from them, and I really recommend that. Now, we can also support country federation with FOASPS. Okay, we try to set a resource mobilization task force in the past. We tried to put in place such a task force. We did not receive a lot of participants for all the country federations. Even the country federation that had some experience, and we are expecting that they will be instrumental in supporting other country federation. They did not send anybody. So it was like maybe people don't understand our vision on that. So it did not prosper very well. Then what we start doing was, okay, as the task force cannot take place, the training were not coming in because of a lot of challenges, we realized that, okay, let us start proceeding by learning by doing. So what we started doing was that when we found a call for proposal that relate to one country, we send it to our colleagues of the country federations, and we ask them, please, we came across this call for proposal. Please look at it and see if it is interesting for your country federation. Are you ready to respond to it? Do you have the capacity to respond alone, or do you need the support of FOASPS? So you see, we don't want to give the impression to people that we want to put any pressure on them. We give them the capacity to decide if they want to go for it, if they are able to do it alone, or if they need our support. And in some situations, we receive the response that, yes, we want to go for it. Oh, we are able to do that. We will be doing it this and that, and we don't really need your support. If you need, we'll get back to you. We also received country federation that said, we want to respond to it. We want to work it out with you. So then we put in place a proposal writing committee where the permanent secretariat and the people from those country federation work together. We've been doing well. I mean, we'll be doing well because we had like Togo, Burkina Faso, which projects were successful at a certain point. With Togo, for example, one of their projects passed the first stage. We started working on the second stage before USAID closed down. And meanwhile, it was a call for proposal sent by USAID, you know. So those are some of the experience that I can share with you, Dr. Ese, to respond to your question. Yes, we are ready to support. We will be doing it. And if you yourself, you come across a call for proposal that we haven't seen, and you believe you want to respond, and the permanent secretariat can support you, feel free to reach out, and we'll put in place the system to respond. Over.
All right, thank you, Mr. Kofi. We have a contribution in the chat box by Dr. Tiela. He said it's an eye-opener, and he thanks you for the presentation, mostly knowing very well other organizations that he can cooperate with. He wanted to thank you. I think we'll draw the curtains on the questions here. So, Mr. Kofi, your final words before we come to an end of the session.
Well, I will not have any specific final word if it is not to thank our colleagues. It is always a pleasure for us to interact with you, to share some of our experiences, and feel free to, even if you don't have your comment here now, but you have any question later on, feel free to send your questions and we'll manage to respond. And if there is any opportunity that you believe you can work together, feel free to quickly reach out to us and we will see how best we can address that. So thanks again and have a great day.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Thanks for everyone.